Let's carry on talking about some physical elements or some physical developmental considerations with preschoolers. Again, we're talking about the period between 3 and 6. We've got a good chunk of the kids who are already considered obese. The concern with being obese as a preschooler or is that the odds of being obese for the rest of your life are much higher. We start to see a lot of food allergies. It says 90% of allergies are attributed to 8 different foods: milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, soy, wheat, and shellfish. So there's sort of some common ones here. They tend to outgrow them, or many people will outgrow them. There's some interesting theories as to why food allergies are so common, or so much more common today than they would have been aware of them when I was a preschooler. And one theory actually is that we're too hygienic, and because allergies are a kind of autoimmune response. The notion is that a child hasn't had the opportunity to develop like an immunity to, or actually that they have what an allergy is it's a hyperimmunity. But anyway, so there's some different theories on this. This is a time where we should be taking care of children's teeth, of course, because both your permanent teeth are in place by the time you get through this developmental stage. Hopefully there's a discussion about, or a brief reference to, fluoride. I know currently in September of 2025 there are some debates as to about the usefulness of fluoride, if it should be in the water. I have lived during a period where fluoride in water was not available, and in some places, and in other places it was. And certainly there is a difference between the teeth of children who grew up in a place where there was fluoride in the water versus there wasn't. And now the argument is that there are other unknown implications, and should fluoride be in the water for everybody, if not everyone is as in a sensitive developmental stage. The most common causes of illness or death during this period are accidents that are happening at home. And part of this has to do with, or at least according to our textbook, has to do with this is a time where children are highly active and they're taking lots of risks. So they're climbing on the back of the couch, or they're just in situations where it's hard for a parent to always keep their eye on them. My mother tells me of 2 stories during this time when I was a child. One of them was, apparently I drank a whole thing of Mop and Glow, which turns out to be it's just soapy water, but that freaked her out. Parent may turn around, and the next thing they know, their child may put their hand on a lawnmower or touch something, just as quick as that, because they're always toddlers or preschoolers are always on the go. But there are some social influences, or what our textbook is calling environmental influences of the risk. And because I'm trained as much as a sociologist as I am anything, I tend to focus a lot on the role of the social economic status. In other words, how much money a family has. Money influences potentially the quality of a child care, or the kind of like built environment a child may grow up in. Certainly you can imagine that homelessness would be a more dangerous situation for a child. That's contributed to money. There's a phenomenon called environmental justice, and what this refers to is that in some parts of cities or countries, there's more pollutants. The water is less clean. You may be in a house where there's more lead in the pipes or in the paint, right? So this is all tied to social class. Your textbook makes reference to a rather timely issue here, and that is the role of race and ethnicity, and how if a family is concerned that that their immigration status may be challenged, this may have a chilling effect on someone seeking health care, or someone emergency health care or medical health care, or anything along this line. So these act as environmental or social determinants that influence a child's risk factor for illnesses and for getting treatment and care for those illnesses and accidents. Okay, so this is a shift. Now we're shifting away from the biological and to cognitive development. Remember that cognitive is referring to our brain development, not necessarily our brain development, but the way we think. So cognition is how is thinking and how a child thinks. What's significant in this stage of life is something called a pre-operational thinking, which is when a kid we've gone from this like concrete that everything is what is hands on, and now we're moving into sort of a symbolic understanding. And so this happens between like 2 and 5, and this is a bunch of fancy, bunch of textbook terms referencing what we mean by pre-operational or symbolic way of thinking. So one idea is what we would call a symbol. I need to lower my thing because I can't read it. Is what we call symbolic function. And the symbolic function is a child's ability to use symbols, such as words, and attach meaning to them. And this is critical for like pretend play, because if you think about what pretending is, it's where you take something like a stick and pretend it's a phone, right? And this means you have to, that's a whole other sort of cognitive leap. Another one is a term animism, and this is when everything is given like a name and is humanized. That's not the right word, but if you think like stuffed animals, right? So stuffed animals now have a name, and they may have a backstory, and they talk and they interact. So you're given human qualities to non-human things. And it's this ability to think about things. Here's your textbook definition right here, is to think about something in the absence of its sensory or motor cues. So it is a one step beyond the concrete. It's the symbolic. Some other things that come under this symbolic thinking or this pre-operational thinking is a phenomena or is a concept called causality. This is so a kid at this stage doesn't necessarily understand cause and effect, but what they may do is a phenomenon called transduction, and they may link two things that happen at the same time. I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm escaping two examples. Oh, they get in trouble and then their sister gets hurt, or they get in trouble and their dad loses their job. Those are not very good examples, but it's the idea that because these two things happen at the same time, one causes the other, and that's certainly, or yeah, that's different than cause and effect. I do this and causes something else. Centration, I believe there's a video on that explains some of these concepts. So centration is the idea that you focus on one aspect of something, and a really good example is like the pile of pennies. So one of the examples of this cognition, of this cognitive thing, is if a child like will see a pile of pennies, and they may think that pile is more than if those pennies are all spread out, right? So that's a principle of conservation. Or I think another example of this is that a glass of water, when it's in a tall glass of water, a child will, or liquid, a child will think that it's actually more liquid than if it's in a small one, because they're looking at the height of the thing and not considering the dimension or the other qualities. So they're focusing on one element over the other. There's centrism. Or transformation is a fancy word, but the classic example of this is like a graham cracker. So if you take 1 graham cracker and you break it in 2, a child will interpret 2 crackers as actually having more than 1 cracker. Right? So do they take 2 even though it's the same size, or do they take 1 larger one? And they may take 2 because 2 looks like more than 1. And then I don't know what the falling penny example is, but the melting ice. Right? Oh, I think I may have gotten it confused here. The melting ice, I don't think there's a quiz question about these, but just interesting to sort of consider, is the idea that the child is not yet able to understand that ice and liquid are the same thing, right? They can't process those two, that they're different states of the same thing. Is this thing, this puddle of water, is not the same as the ice cube that was there a few minutes ago. And then another one, and this is, I'm pretty sure there's a little video I have in your chapter for this one. This one is egocentrism. And this is really important because in the next lecture, I want to talk about a concept called theory of mind. And theory of mind is the idea that you can comprehend that somebody has a mind and thinks differently than mine. And egocentrism is, if you, I keep thinking of my sociology, but if you think ego, myself, centrism is my view. So in egocentrism, this concept is that no one else, that everyone else sees things the same way that I do. Though they haven't quite figured out that someone, if they sit on the other side of the table, that the room or the thing is going to look different. There's a classic example of the 3 mountain experiment that I'm pretty sure you'll see a video of this one, but what it is a child sits on one side of the mountain, of a pretend mountain, and it's got like a model of a house and a model of a horse. On the other side of the mountain is where the researcher sits, and they ask the child what they think the researcher sees, and the child will think the researcher sees the same thing that they do, because a child has not developed the ability to understand that you see different things on the other side of the table than I see. Oof, I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to stop right here and pick up talking more about theory of mind.